The air in room 112 of Northgate Elementary was a symphony of chaos, a vibrant living thing composed of dissonant hope and earnest effort. 25 small voices, a chorus drawn from every corner of the city's sprawling, unforgiving map, strained to reach a harmony that hovered just beyond their grasp. The scent of floor wax, rain-damp coats, and the sweet, dusty smell of old sheet music hung thick and familiar. This was Sarah Jenkins' sanctuary and her battlefield. Her baton, a simple wooden dowel worn smooth by her grip, sliced through the air, her face a mask of intense concentration and boundless affection. "A little more heart from the altos, my loves," she called out, her voice warm but firm, managing to rise above the joyful noise. "Remember, you're not just singing notes, you're telling a story. Let me feel it." The room itself was a testament to her fight. The upright piano in the corner had more chipped keys than perfect ones. Its mahogany finish faded to a dull brown. The music stands were a mismatched collection of metal and plastic, some held together with silver duct tape. Every grant application Sarah had painstakingly written seemed to evaporate into the bureaucratic ether, leaving her with nothing but her own relentless optimism to fuel the school's only arts program. For these children, whose lives were often a cacophony of sirens, shouting, and the silent pressures of poverty, this room was the only place where their voices truly mattered. And then there was Emily. In the back row, small for her 8 years, sat Emily Vance. She was a tiny island of profound stillness in an ocean of restless energy. While the other children swayed and tapped their feet, Emily was motionless, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her dark hair falling like a curtain around a face that seemed to hold the city's oldest secrets. Her eyes, a deep, guarded brown, weren't empty. They were full of something Sarah couldn't yet name, a heavy, silent weight that made her own heart ache. Emily had arrived 3 weeks ago, a ghost delivered by a weary social worker. The file was thin, clinical. Mother, Maria, deceased. Sudden. No other family listed. Emily hadn't spoken a single word since she'd walked through the school's doors. Not one. Sarah's focus drifted from the choir to the silent girl. She saw the other children's sidelong glances, the mix of curiosity and childish impatience. They had tried, in their clumsy, sweet way, to include her, but Emily's silence was a wall they didn't know how to climb. The final chord of the song wobbled, then collapsed into a cascade of giggles and chatter as the bell rang, signaling the end of the day. As the children scrambled for their backpacks, a sharp clicking sound approached the doorway. Principal Albright stood there, her smile as polished and impenetrable as the pearl earrings she wore. A woman whose ambition was an almost visible aura. Ms. Albright viewed the school not as a community, but as a series of strategic objectives. "Sarah, a moment," she said, her voice smooth as silk. She stepped into the room, her gaze sweeping over the worn-out equipment with a flicker of distaste before landing on Sarah. "The choir is sounding energetic. The tri-district competition is only 6 weeks away. You know what's riding on this." Sarah knew. A win meant a $5,000 grant, new instruments, maybe even a part-time assistant to help with the 60-student chorus. A loss meant the program would likely be the first thing on the chopping block during the next budget review. "We're working hard, Eleanor," Sarah said, keeping her tone even. Ms. Albright's smile didn't waver, but her eyes drifted to the back of the room, where Emily was slowly, methodically placing a single book into her worn backpack. "About that, I've been reviewing the new student files. The Vance girl." Sarah's posture stiffened. "Emily." "Emily," Ms. Albright corrected herself, the name sounding foreign on her tongue. "She's a sweet-looking child, I'm sure, but she's a non-participant. In a competitive choir, every voice counts, or in this case, the lack of one is conspicuous. She's been through an unimaginable trauma," Sarah said, her voice dropping, a protective instinct flaring in her chest. "She needs time. This room, this music, it's a lifeline for her, whether she's singing or not." "I appreciate your compassion, Sarah, I truly do. It's one of your most notable qualities," Ms. Albright said, the compliment landing like a carefully aimed dart. "But we must be pragmatic. A silent child on stage during the city-wide competition could be seen as a liability. It might be kinder for everyone if she were to perhaps help with the programs, or simply be in the audience supporting her friends. The suggestion felt like a physical blow. To cast Emily out, to reinforce her invisibility, was unthinkable. Sarah's heart ached with a frustration and a fierce protective hope that felt impossibly heavy. If your heart is also racing for this little girl and her teacher, leave a like to show them they're not alone in this fight. "She stays," Sarah said, the words quiet but absolute. "She is a member of this choir. That is not negotiable." Ms. Albright's eyes narrowed for a fraction of a second, the polished mask cracking just enough to reveal the steel beneath. "Very well, but understand this, Sarah. Your idealism is admirable, but it doesn't pay for new hymnals. I need a win. The school needs a win. Don't let one child's tragedy become the entire program's." She turned and clicked her way out of the room, leaving a chill in her wake. Sarah took a deep breath, the scent of chalk dust and old wood suddenly feeling like the only real things in the world. All the other children were gone now. Only Emily remained, standing by her chair, her backpack now on, looking smaller and more fragile than ever under the flickering fluorescent lights. Sarah walked over to her, her footsteps soft on the linoleum. She knelt so they were eye to eye, but she didn't force a gaze. She simply started tidying a stack of sheet music nearby. "Ms. Albright means well," Sarah said softly, as if speaking to the air. "Grown-ups sometimes get so worried about winning and losing, they forget what's really important, like how a song can feel like a warm blanket on a cold day." She glanced at Emily. The little girl was watching her, her expression unreadable. Sarah moved to the old piano and let her fingers drift over the keys, playing a simple, gentle melody. It was a lullaby, soft and questioning. She didn't sing. She just let the notes speak for her, filling the quiet space between them. She played for a minute, then two, the simple tune weaving a sense of peace into the tense afternoon air. Emily didn't move, didn't make a sound, but Sarah could feel the rigid set of her small shoulders relax, just a fraction. It was the smallest of victories, but it felt monumental. When the melody ended, Sarah let the last note hang in the air until it faded to nothing. She looked over at Emily, who was now staring at the piano keys, a flicker of something, longing, memory, pain, in her dark eyes. "There's a song inside you, Emily Vance," Sarah whispered, her voice thick with a conviction that came from the deepest part of her soul. "I know there is, and I'm going to help you find it." Emily just blinked, a slow, deliberate motion. Then she turned and walked out of the music room, her footsteps making no sound. Sarah remained at the piano, her fingers resting on the silent keys. The principal's warning echoed in her ears, a cold counterpoint to the warm melody still lingering in her heart. The stakes were no longer just about funding or saving a program. They were about saving a voice that the world had already tried to silence. Looking at the empty doorway, where the small, silent girl had just stood, Sarah made a vow. She would not let this child be broken. She would reach through the grief and the silence and find the music she knew was locked inside that tiny chest. The competition, the principal, the entire world could wait. Emily's song came first. The days that followed settled into a quiet, determined rhythm. Sarah dedicated every spare moment to Emily, transforming the echoey music room into a sanctuary just for them. After the final bell sent the other children spilling into the hallways with joyous shouts, a gentle quiet would fall. It was in this quiet that Sarah did her most important work. She never asked Emily to speak. She never pushed or prodded. Instead, she spoke the universal language she knew best. Her fingers would find the worn ivory keys of the old upright piano, and she would play. Not complex concertos or demanding etudes, but simple, searching melodies that hung in the air like dust motes in a sunbeam. She played lullabies her own mother had sung to her, gentle folk songs about rolling hills and endless skies, and sometimes just soft, improvisational chords that seemed to follow the path of her own hopeful thoughts. Emily would sit in a small chair near the window, sometimes with a box of crayons and a piece of paper, sometimes just watching Sarah's hands move across the keyboard. Her silence was a living thing, a heavy blanket that Sarah was trying to lift, not by tearing it away, but by warming it from underneath. There were moments, small and fleeting, that Sarah clung to like life rafts. A slight tilt of Emily's head when a melody took an unexpected turn, the briefest flicker of something, not quite a smile, but a softening, around her eyes when Sarah hummed a particularly sweet harmony. Sarah knew she was building a bridge, one note at a time, across an ocean of unspoken grief. The pressure from Ms. Albright was a constant low hum in the background of her mind, a reminder of the competition, of the funding, of the very real possibility of failure. But here, in this room with this one silent child, the only thing that mattered was the music. In a different world, one made of glass and steel and glacial silence, David Vance moved through his days with the precision of a surgeon. His office was a cathedral of minimalist power on the 82nd floor of Vance Tower, a space so high above the city that the streets below were mere geometric patterns, the people invisible. Here, humanity was an abstraction, a series of data points on a spreadsheet. David was a master of this world. His empire was built on ruthless efficiency and an almost inhuman ability to sever emotion from logic. Philanthropy to him was no different. It was an investment in public perception, a calculated maneuver on the grand chessboard of corporate reputation. His assistant, Olivia, a young woman as sharp and polished as the chrome on his desk, entered his office without a sound. She placed a sleek tablet before him, the screen glowing with a list of his charitable holdings. "The annual Tri-District Arts Gala is next month, Mr. Vance," she said, her voice perfectly modulated. "Your foundation is the primary sponsor. They've requested you as the keynote speaker." David didn't look up from the financial report he was dissecting. "Have legal draft a speech," he murmured, his voice a low baritone that never betrayed a hint of feeling. "Standard platitudes, the importance of art for the next generation, the Vance corporate commitment to community. You know the drill." "Of course, sir," Olivia replied, retrieving the tablet. She paused for a fraction of a second. "The school district also mentioned that one of the beneficiary programs, an elementary school choir from the West Side, is performing. They thought you might enjoy seeing your contribution in action." A flicker of something, annoyance perhaps, crossed David's features. "My contribution is the check that clears, Olivia. I don't need to watch children sing off-key to validate it. That will be all." She vanished as silently as she had appeared, leaving David alone in his sterile kingdom, a king who ruled over numbers and shadows, completely disconnected from the lives his wealth touched. One crisp afternoon, as the autumn leaves skittered across the schoolyard pavement, Sarah was walking Emily to the designated pickup spot when a kind voice called out, "Emily, dear, look at you." An elderly woman with a warm, wrinkled smile and a brightly colored shawl wrapped around her shoulders approached them. She moved with the slow, deliberate grace of age. "I'm Mrs. Rodriguez. I lived next door to Maria and this sweet girl for 5 years." Sarah's heart gave a hopeful leap. "It's so wonderful to meet you," she said, her voice full of genuine warmth. "I'm Sarah Jenkins, Emily's music teacher." Mrs. Rodriguez's eyes, cloudy with cataracts but sharp with memory, crinkled at the corners. She looked at Emily, who simply stared back with her usual profound stillness. "She's the spitting image of her mother," the old woman said softly, more to herself than to Sarah. "That same quiet strength, you know her Mama Maria. That woman had a voice like an angel. She was always writing in a little notebook, sitting on her front stoop, humming these beautiful, sad songs. It was like the music just poured out of her." Sarah leaned in, her every nerve ending tingling with curiosity. This was it. This was the first real window into the world that had shaped Emily. She was a songwriter. "Oh yes, a true poet," Mrs. Rodriguez confirmed, nodding wistfully. Life wasn't easy for her, working 2 jobs, raising this precious one all on her own, but the music was her escape. There was one song. I heard her humming it all the time near the end, a melody so full of heartbreak and hope it could make you cry just to hear the tune. She told me once with a sad little smile, "This is my last song, Rosa." I never knew what she meant by it, but the sound of it, I'll never forget it. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Her last song. The phrase echoed in Sarah's mind, a piece of a puzzle she was desperate to solve. She looked down at Emily, whose small hand had unconsciously tightened its grip on her own. For the first time, Sarah felt she wasn't just trying to reach a silent child. She was trying to uncover a hidden legacy, a symphony of love and sacrifice left behind by a mother with the voice of an angel. Later that night, the city glittered below David Vance's penthouse apartment like a carpet of scattered diamonds. The silence here was different from the silence in his office. It was heavier, lonelier. He stood before the floor-to-ceiling window, a glass of expensive scotch in his hand, but he wasn't looking at the view. His mind was miles and years away. He walked to his desk, a single piece of black marble, and from a locked drawer, he pulled out a small, faded photograph. It was of him and a woman taken nearly a decade ago. He was younger, his smile less guarded, his eyes full of a fire he had long since extinguished. The woman beside him was radiant, her dark hair a wild cascade around her shoulders, her laugh captured mid-peal. Maria. The affair had been a whirlwind, a brief, passionate rebellion against the gilded cage of his life. She was a musician, a dreamer, a force of nature who saw past the Vance name and into the man he might have been. But his world, with its cold expectations and dynastic pressures, had suffocated their love. His family had demanded he marry an heiress to merge empires, to secure the legacy. He had tried to explain, to find a compromise, but Maria's pride was as fierce as her love. He could still hear her voice from their last bitter argument. "I don't need your money, David. I will not be your dirty little secret. I need you. And if I can't have all of you, then I don't want anything at all." She had refused the settlement his father's lawyers had offered, a sum designed to buy her silence. And then she had vanished, taking with her a part of him he never got back. He'd learned of her passing through a dry legal notice about her meager estate, which mentioned a child. He'd dismissed it as a final desperate play from her relatives. It couldn't be his. He would have known. He had to believe that. His personal assistant, Olivia, entered the room, her presence pulling him sharply back to the present. "Sir, I apologize for the late hour," she began, "but regarding the school showcase I mentioned, standard procedure is to send an observer to ensure the Foundation's funds are being properly utilized. I've scheduled a junior associate to attend next week." David, his mind still clouded with the ghost of a long-lost melody, barely registered her words. He waved a dismissive hand, his back still to her, as he stared at the photograph. "Fine. Do what you have to do," he said, his voice thick with an emotion she had never heard before. He slid the picture back into the drawer and locked it away, burying the past once more. He had no idea that the junior associate Olivia was sending was a scout, and that the past he so desperately tried to bury was about to walk onto a stage and sing its truth for the entire world to hear. Two separate worlds, bound by a secret song, were spinning closer and closer, destined to collide with the force of a symphony. The days leading up to the preliminary school showcase were a delicate dance of patience and hope. Sarah Jenkins spent every spare moment with Emily Vance, not pushing, but simply being present. She learned that Emily communicated through her art. When words failed, her small hands would move a crayon across a page, drawing swirling vortexes of grey and black on days she was sad and tiny. Solitary yellow suns in the corners of vast empty pages, on days a sliver of light broke through. They would sit together at the old, upright piano, its ivory keys yellowed with age. Sarah would play simple, gentle arpeggios, her fingers moving slowly, watching Emily's reflection in the polished wood. The little girl never made a sound, but sometimes her small finger would tentatively reach out and press a single, silent key, as if testing the very concept of making a noise in a world that had stolen her mother's voice. Sarah spoke to her in soft tones, telling her stories about the music itself, how a C minor chord could hold all the sadness in the world, and how a G major could feel like coming home. One particularly dreary afternoon, a persistent drizzle tapping against the tall classroom windows, Sarah decided it was time to organize the chaotic pile of sheet music and art supplies that had accumulated near Emily's designated cubby. The showcase was only a week away, and Ms. Albright's reminders about professionalism were becoming more frequent. "A tidy space reflects a tidy mind, Sarah," she had chirped that morning, her eyes scanning the room for imperfections. As Sarah helped Emily pack her worn-out backpack, a small folded piece of paper fluttered out from between a coloring book and a social studies textbook, landing softly on the faded linoleum floor. It was old, the creases so deep they were almost part of the paper's texture. The edges were soft and frayed, a testament to being handled hundreds, perhaps thousands of times. Sarah picked it up. "What's this, sweetie?" she asked gently. Emily's eyes widened for a fraction of a second, a flicker of panic, before her usual guarded expression returned. She simply stared at the paper in Sarah's hand. Unfolding it carefully, Sarah felt her breath catch. It was a lyric sheet, the words written in an elegant, flowing cursive that spoke of a gentle but determined hand. The ink was faded to a soft blue-gray, and a single tiny circular stain, perhaps from a tear dropped long ago, blurred a word in the second verse. At the top, in the same beautiful script, was the title, "My Last Song." And at the bottom, a simple, heartbreaking signature, "Maria." Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. This was it. This was the song Mrs. Rodriguez had mentioned. She quickly scanned the words, and the world around her seemed to fall away. They weren't just lyrics. They were a story, a confession, a final whispered testament of a mother's impossible choice. "A gilded cage is still a cage," the first line read, "and a prince can't see the sky. I chose the stars to be your guide, my little secret lullaby." The verses spoke of a love that was pure but doomed by circumstance, of a world of glittering glass towers, and another of quiet, dignified struggle. It was a letter to a man she loved but could never be with, and a promise to a child she would protect at all costs. The words painted a portrait of a woman who had walked away from a life of immense privilege, not out of spite, but out of a fierce, protective love, choosing invisibility to give her daughter a chance at a real, untainted life. A premonition, cold and sharp, pierced through Sarah. This song was more than a melody. It was a key. It was the answer to a question no one had even known to ask. She looked at Emily, whose dark eyes were fixed on the page, her expression unreadable but intensely focused. Carefully, Sarah folded the paper back along its original creases and gently tucked it into the front pocket of Emily's backpack. "This is beautiful, Emily," she whispered. "Your mom's song. It's a gift." For the first time, Emily didn't just look at her. She seemed to look through her, a flicker of her mother's strength and sorrow passing through her gaze. Miles away, in a sterile office that overlooked the city from the 52nd floor, David Vance stared at a high-resolution photograph on his tablet. It was a candid shot from the school district's newsletter announcing the upcoming choir showcase. In the center of a group of smiling children was a small girl with a mop of dark hair and large, solemn eyes who was not smiling. His assistant, Olivia, stood silently by his desk. She was young, efficient, and had a rare talent for presenting information without emotional inflection. "As requested, Mr. Vance," she said, her voice even. "This is the preliminary showcase for the tri-district competition. Our foundation is a primary sponsor. The child circled is Emily Vance. She is the student I mentioned in my previous report." David zoomed in on the girl's face. He felt nothing. A mild, detached curiosity, perhaps. He saw a child, nothing more. But Olivia, ever meticulous, had done her job. "The resemblance is tangential at best," David said, his voice clipped. "Children often resemble people. It's a function of a limited number of human features." "Of course, sir," Olivia replied, unfazed. "However, during my site visit, I spoke briefly with the principal, a Ms. Albright. She was quite effusive about the child's tragic backstory. An orphan, a mother who recently passed. The principal seemed to believe that a story of this nature might be of particular interest to the Foundation's philanthropic goals." David's eyes narrowed. That was it, the angle, the play. It always came down to a play. A desperate principal, a struggling school, a child with a sad story. It was a classic, pathetic attempt to pull at the heartstrings of a billionaire to secure a bigger check. He leaned back in his leather chair, the city lights twinkling below like a carpet of insignificant diamonds. He thought of Maria. He remembered her fierce pride, her refusal to take a single dime from him or his family. She had vanished, and he had allowed himself to believe it was because she hated him. The idea that she had left carrying his child, only for that child to be used as a fundraising tool years later, ignited a cold, controlled fury within him. "Olivia," he said, his voice dangerously quiet, "get legal on the line. I want a full discreet background check on this music teacher, Sarah Jenkins, and the principal, Albright. I want to know everything. Financials, connections, past employment. I want to know if this is a coordinated effort. I want to know if they found out about Maria and are trying to orchestrate a shakedown using this child." He swiped the image off the screen. "Find out if it's a scam, and if it is, we will shut it down. Publicly." Olivia nodded once. "Right away, Mr. Vance." She turned and left the office, the thick door closing with a silent, expensive sigh, leaving David alone with the ghost of a memory and the hardening conviction that he was, once again, being played. Unaware of the storm gathering in the corporate world, Ms. Albright was making her own strategic moves. She saw Emily's potential not as a child to be nurtured, but as a narrative to be leveraged. That very afternoon, she had placed a call to David Vance's philanthropic liaison, a number she kept for special occasions. "I just wanted to personally highlight a truly inspiring student we have," she'd said, her voice dripping with manufactured sincerity. "A little girl, Emily Vance. Yes, a tragic coincidence with the name, isn't it? She's recently orphaned, but possesses the voice of an angel. A true story of triumph over adversity. We feel her story could be a powerful centerpiece for the Foundation's next campaign." The call, meant to secure favor and funding, was instead transcribed and added to a growing legal file, each word twisting her ambition into what looked on paper like a calculated conspiracy, with Sarah Jenkins, Emily's devoted teacher, as the unwitting centerpiece of the entire supposed plot. Back in the music room, the weight of the competition was beginning to press down on everyone. The children were getting restless, their voices strained. Sarah held Maria's song in her mind like a fragile secret. She knew with a certainty that settled deep in her bones that this song needed to be heard. But how? How could she ask a child who hadn't spoken a single word in months to stand on a stage and sing the most painful, personal song imaginable? It felt cruel, impossible. Yet the thought of that beautiful, heartbreaking melody remaining silent felt like a greater tragedy. The pressure from Ms. Albright was suffocating. The looming threat of budget cuts was a constant shadow, and now the invisible legal team of a ruthless billionaire was quietly digging into her life, searching for a crime she had no idea she was being accused of. All Sarah knew was that a little girl in her classroom was carrying the weight of her mother's entire legacy in a folded piece of paper in her backpack, and the world was about to collide with it, whether they were ready or not. The air in the music room hung thick and heavy, smelling faintly of chalk dust and rain-soaked jackets. Outside, a dreary Tuesday afternoon bled into grey twilight, the light casting long, tired shadows across the worn wooden floor. Practice was not going well. The children's voices, usually a source of chaotic joy for Sarah Jenkins, were flat and listless. They slumped in their plastic chairs, their energy drained by a long school day and the mounting pressure of the competition, which now felt less like an opportunity and more like a looming judgment. Even little Leo, whose enthusiasm could normally power a small city, was staring at his scuffed sneakers, his soprano wavering with uncertainty. Ms. Albright's words echoed in Sarah's mind. Win or face further cuts. It was a cruel ultimatum, turning their sanctuary of song into a high-stakes arena. Sarah's gaze drifted to the back row, where Emily Vance sat, a small still island in a sea of fidgeting children. As always, Emily was silent, her dark hair curtaining a face that seemed to hold the world's oldest secrets. But today, Sarah noticed something new in the girl's posture, a tension, a tightly coiled watchfulness. Her small hands were clenched in her lap, her knuckles white. She wasn't just observing, she was listening with an intensity that felt almost painful. Sarah's heart ached for her. Every attempt to connect, every gentle melody played on the out-of-tune piano had been met with that same impenetrable quiet. But Sarah refused to believe it was emptiness. It was fullness, a silence so full of unspoken things it threatened to burst. Feeling a wave of desperation wash over her, a need to cut through the room's apathy and reach that one silent child, Sarah walked to the center of the room. She closed her eyes for a moment, picturing the faded, creased sheet of paper she'd found in Emily's backpack. The words, Maria's words, were seared into her memory. My last song. A mother's final testament. Without a plan, without even a conscious thought, Sarah began to hum. It was not a melody she had practiced. It was a tune born of intuition, of empathy, of imagining the love and sorrow woven into Maria's lyrics. Soft and tentative at first, the notes floated into the stale air, a simple, haunting refrain full of both longing and resilience. A few of the children looked up, their curiosity piqued by the unfamiliar melody. Sarah continued, her voice gaining a quiet confidence, pouring all of her hope for these children, for this program, for Emily, into the wordless song. Then it happened. From the back of the room, a sound. It was barely audible, a note so delicate it was more feeling than sound, like the hum of a hummingbird's wings. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She kept humming, her heart hammering against her ribs, afraid to stop, afraid that any sudden movement would shatter the fragile moment. The sound grew, a perfect, clear tone that aligned with her own, a second voice weaving into a harmony so pure it was breathtaking. Every child in the room slowly turned. Their chatter ceased, their fidgeting stopped, every eye fixed on Emily Vance. The silent child was singing. Her eyes were closed, her face tilted slightly upward as if listening to a voice only she could hear. And then, words began to pour from her, the lyrics from the faded sheet, as if she had known them her entire life. Her voice was not the tentative warble of a child. It was a sound that seemed ancient and new all at once, an ethereal, crystalline tone that carried an impossible weight of grief and a ferocious, enduring love. It was Maria's voice channeled through her daughter. In the whisper of the wind, you'll find my name. Emily sang, her voice filling every corner of the room, pushing back the shadows. In the rhythm of the rain, I'll still remain. The room fell into a silence so profound it was deafening. The other children sat frozen, their mouths slightly agape, their faces a mixture of shock and utter reverence. Leo's eyes were wide, glistening with unshed tears. They were no longer in a dreary classroom. They were somewhere sacred, bearing witness to a miracle. Sarah felt tears streaming down her own cheeks, but she didn't wipe them away. This was more than a breakthrough. It was a resurrection. The silence hadn't been an absence of voice. It had been a gathering of strength. Emily wasn't just singing a song, she was unleashing a story, a legacy, a love that had refused to die. The final note hung in the air, shimmering and perfect, before fading into the stillness. Emily opened her eyes. They were clear, and for the first time since she had arrived, they were not empty. They were filled with her mother. The classroom door creaked open, breaking the spell. Ms. Albright stood in the doorway, her arms crossed, an expression of clinical appraisal on her face that quickly morphed into stunned disbelief. She had clearly heard the end of the song. For a moment, even the perpetually ambitious principal was speechless, her strategic mind momentarily silenced by the raw, undeniable power of what she had just witnessed. The whispers started the next morning. They moved through the school's hallways like an electric current. Did you hear? The silent girl. The one in Jenkins's choir. She has the voice of an angel. Teachers stopped Sarah by the water fountain, their faces alight with a mixture of gossip and genuine awe. Students pointed at Emily in the cafeteria, not with cruelty but with a newfound respect. The silent, invisible girl had become a legend overnight. Her voice had shattered the mundane reality of the school, leaving a trail of wonder in its wake. Sarah knew what she had to do. It was a conviction that settled deep in her bones, as certain as the sunrise. She found Ms. Albright in her office, meticulously organizing a binder of budget proposals. The principal looked up, her expression once again composed, the brief moment of awe replaced by calculated consideration. "Sarah," Ms. Albright began, preempting her, "I heard what happened yesterday. Quite remarkable." "It was more than remarkable, Helen," Sarah said, her voice steady. "It was a gift, and it's a gift we need to share. I want Emily to perform My Last Song as a solo at the competition. Ms. Albright steepled her fingers, her eyes narrowing. Absolutely not. The refusal was so swift, so final, that it took Sarah a moment to process. What? Why? You heard her. You know what that could mean for us, for the school. I know exactly what it could mean, Ms. Albright countered, her tone becoming sharp, clinical. It could mean a child with significant trauma having a complete breakdown on a public stage in front of the entire district, including our most important donors. Do you have any idea what that kind of publicity would do? We'd be seen as exploitative, reckless. It's an unacceptable emotional risk. The only risk is silencing her again now that she's found her voice. Sarah's voice rose, filled with a protective fire she hadn't known she possessed. This isn't about winning for her, Helen. This is about honoring her mother. This is about her healing. That song is a part of her soul. Asking her not to sing it would be cruel. I am not being cruel, Sarah. I am being a pragmatist, Miss Albright shot back, standing up and leaning over her desk. Her performance is unpredictable. She's a sweet girl, but she is an emotional liability. We will put her in the back row of the choir, and if she sings, wonderful. If she doesn't, no one will notice. We will build our program around the reliable students. A cold fury settled over Sarah. So you'd rather we lose with dignity than take a chance on a miracle? I'd rather we don't set a vulnerable child up for a catastrophic public failure, Miss Albright said, her voice dripping with finality. My decision is final. But it wasn't. The buzz around Emily had grown too loud to be contained within the school walls. A music teacher from a rival school, who had been visiting for a planning meeting, had overheard a snippet of Emily singing and had mentioned it to a reporter for a local community blog, who was also his wife. The story, framed as "The Silent Songbird of Northwood Elementary," went online that evening. It was a small piece, but it was enough. By the end of the week, the school's phone was ringing with inquiries. The narrative was too powerful, too perfect. The silent orphan who sings with the voice of an angel. Ms. Albright summoned Sarah back to her office 2 days later. The principal's demeanor had undergone a complete shift. The stern refusal was gone, replaced by an air of shrewd enthusiasm. On her computer screen was the community blog post. It seems our little songbird has captured the public's imagination, Ms. Albright said, a thin smile playing on her lips. It presents an opportunity. Sarah stared at her, saying nothing, letting the principal reveal her true motivations. A solo performance would be a powerful statement, Ms. Albright continued, her eyes gleaming with strategic light. It's a human interest story the judges and the donors will find irresistible. It demonstrates our school's commitment to nurturing hidden talent, to overcoming adversity. She paused, looking directly at Sarah. You were right. Emily will perform her solo. Sarah felt a small, bitter taste in her mouth. It wasn't a victory of the heart, but a concession to public relations. Ms. Albright hadn't changed her mind about the risk to Emily. She had simply decided that the potential reward now outweighed it. But it didn't matter. The outcome was the same. She'll need support, Sarah said, her voice firm. I'll be with her, every step of the way. Of course, Ms. Albright said smoothly, already turning back to her computer, whatever it takes to ensure a flawless performance. As Sarah walked out of the office, she felt a profound sense of foreboding mixed with her triumph. The stage was now set. The decision had been made, not out of faith, but out of strategy. The fate of the music program, and more importantly, the fragile, newly opened heart of a little girl, would now rest on a single performance. On one last song, to be sung in front of a world that had no idea of the secrets it was about to hear. The grand evening of the Tri-District Choir competition unfolded within the velvet and gold embrace of the city's most opulent performing arts center. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and quiet ambition, a world away from the linoleum floors and peeling paint of Sarah Jenkins's classroom. David Vance sat in the front row, a titan of industry encased in a perfectly tailored suit, his presence a silent testament to power and influence. He was there as an honored patron, a name etched onto a brass plaque in the lobby, but beneath the practiced calm, a strange, gnawing curiosity had taken root, a curiosity about a small silent girl his assistant had mentioned, a girl with a ghost of his features in her face. He had come to dismiss it, to see the absurdity of the notion with his own eyes. The school choir performed with a heartfelt enthusiasm that charmed the audience. Their voices, a tapestry of youthful hope, filled the grand hall. But a palpable sense of anticipation settled over the crowd as they finished, a hushed waiting for the soloist everyone had been whispering about. Then she appeared. Emily Vance, a tiny figure in a simple white dress Sarah had bought for her at a department store, walked to the center of the vast empty stage. She looked impossibly small, a lone ship on a dark ocean, bathed in the unforgiving glare of a single brilliant spotlight. For a heart-stopping moment, she just stood there, her hands clasped in front of her, her eyes wide as she took in the sea of shadowy faces. A murmur rippled through the audience. Ms. Albright, watching from the wings, held her breath, her knuckles white. Sarah, standing beside her, simply nodded, a silent message of unwavering faith passing between them. Emily took a deep, trembling breath, the sound captured by the microphone, echoing through the silent hall. And then she began to sing. The first note was fragile, a thread of pure, crystalline sound that seemed to hang suspended in the air. It was Maria's song. My last song. The melody was haunting, a bittersweet lullaby that spoke of rain-slicked city streets and dreams held close in the quiet of the night. Her voice, no longer just a hum, but a full, resonant instrument, carried an emotional weight that belied her 8 years of life. David Vance, who had been observing with a detached, critical eye, felt a jolt, a flicker of something deeply buried. He knew that melody. Maria used to hum it late at night when she thought he was asleep. He had dismissed it then as just a tune, but hearing it now, from the mouth of this child, it was a key turning in a lock he hadn't known existed. The lyrics unfolded, not as a performance, but as a confession, a story whispered from beyond the grave. Emily sang of a love that was fierce and true, a love that was a secret garden in a world of stone. She sang of a mother's impossible choice, the sacrifice made to protect a precious child from a world of blinding spotlights and cold expectations. The words painted a vivid picture of Maria's life, working 2 jobs, her hands raw, her body tired, but her spirit fueled by an unshakable love for her daughter. The song spoke of her fear, not of poverty, but of the harshness of his powerful world, a world that she knew would try to shape and control the beautiful, free spirit of their child. A specific verse struck David like a physical blow. Emily sang, "He built his castles in the sky and I was just the rain. I had to hide our sun from his eclipse to let her light remain." It was a phrase Maria had once written on a napkin in a late-night diner, a piece of poetry he had found beautiful but had not truly understood. Now, delivered with the devastating innocence of his daughter's voice, the meaning was shatteringly clear. She hadn't left him out of spite or for money. She had left to save Emily, and then came the final, heartbreaking verse. Emily's voice trembled but did not break as she sang of Maria's enduring secret love for him, a love she had carried with her until the very end, a final wish that one day he would see their daughter and understand. It was not an accusation, it was a plea, a final powerful letter of love and forgiveness. The music faded, leaving only the sound of Emily's soft breath in the vast, silent auditorium. No one moved, no one coughed. The entire city, it seemed, held its breath, bound together by the raw, undeniable truth that had just been laid bare on that stage. In the front row, the mask of David Vance had completely disintegrated. His face, usually a stoic sculpture of control, was wet with tears. Not quiet, dignified tears, but raw, ragged sobs that shook his entire body. It was a sight so shocking, so profoundly human, that a collective gasp finally broke the silence. The titan of industry, the man who could move markets with a single word, was broken. He rose from his seat, his movements slow, unsteady, as if every step was a monumental effort. The audience parted for him as he walked toward the stage, their eyes wide with a mixture of shock and dawning compassion. He climbed the few steps, never taking his eyes off the small girl who stood there, watching him with a mixture of fear and a heartbreakingly familiar sense of recognition. He stopped a few feet from her, his voice thick with an emotion no one had ever heard from him before. "Emily," he said, the name a prayer. He knelt down, bringing himself to her level. "The song, your mother's song, it was for me." He looked out at the silent, stunned audience, at the news cameras that were now silently recording history. "This girl," he announced, his voice cracking but clear. "This brave, beautiful girl, she is my daughter." The words hung in the air, a public confession that would alter the course of their lives forever. He turned back to Emily, his eyes pleading, "And I am so sorry." He wasn't just speaking to Emily. He was speaking to the memory of Maria, an apology that echoed through the grand hall and into the heavens. "I am so sorry, I didn't see." The applause that erupted was not just for Emily's incredible voice, it was thunderous, a wave of catharsis for the raw courage of her story, for the public shattering of a powerful man's heart, and for the profound, undeniable truth of a mother's love. Sarah Jenkins walked onto the stage and placed a gentle hand on Emily's shoulder, her own eyes filled with tears. Her unwavering faith, her quiet belief in one small child, had not just saved a music program, it had reunited a family and redeemed a man's soul. The weeks that followed were a testament to the transformative power of that night. The story of David Vance and his secret daughter became a legend in the city, but for David, it was not an ending, but a beginning. He shed his cold, corporate persona like an old, ill-fitting coat. He was no longer just a CEO, he was a father. He learned the names of Emily's friends, the color of her favorite crayon, and the way her face lit up when she talked about constellations. He traded late-night board meetings for bedtime stories and hostile takeovers for parent-teacher conferences with a grateful Sarah Jenkins. He established the Maria Vance Legacy Foundation, a multi-million-dollar philanthropic initiative dedicated to what Maria had cherished most. Giving a voice to the voiceless, the foundation funded arts and music programs in under-resourced schools across the country and provided grants to single mothers struggling to build a better life for their children. The first and largest donation, of course, went to Emily's school. The music room was transformed, filled with gleaming new instruments, soundproof walls, and a full-time assistant for Sarah, whose quiet dedication was finally given the resources it deserved. Emily, no longer silent, blossomed. With the weight of her mother's secret lifted, her voice became a source of joy, not pain. She still sang "My Last Song" sometimes in quiet moments with her father, not as a song of grief, but as a hymn of remembrance and love. She had found her family, her voice and her place in a world that now saw her, truly saw her, for the incredible gift she was. One cool autumn evening, months later, David sat with Emily on a bench in their backyard, the city lights twinkling below them like a fallen constellation. Emily, holding his hand, began to hum a new tune, a simple, happy melody she had made up herself. David smiled, a genuine, easy smile that now reached his eyes, and he hummed along with her. Their voices blended in the quiet night air, not a performance for any stage, but a simple, joyful song between a father and his daughter. It was a testament to a love that had endured, a truth that had set them free, and the enduring legacy of a woman who had proven that even the most invisible among us can possess a voice that truly shocks everyone and changes everything.